Most men grow up believing that women are attracted to the nice guy, the man who's always available, always agreeable, never causes conflict. But if you look closely at real life, you'll notice something different. That's not the guy who holds their attention. That's not the guy they talk about when they think no one's listening. There's another type of man, the one we'll call the monster. Not because he's cruel, not because he's dangerous, but because he can't be tamed. End today's video. We're breaking down exactly who he is, why he has such a pull, and how you can develop that same presence without becoming someone you're not. Welcome to Machiavelli's Code, the place where we strip away the lies you've been told about power, respect, and influence, and give you the truth instead. If you're ready to stop living for approval and start living by your own code, hit that subscribe button, tap the like button so more men can hear this message, and let's get started. 1. The illusion society sold you. Since the day you could walk and talk, you've been fed the same script. Be polite. Don't cause trouble. Always be agreeable. Never make anyone uncomfortable. It sounds harmless, even noble. But somewhere along the way, those words got twisted into something else. A quiet command that trained you to live your life chasing the approval of others. You started thinking that if you were nice enough, agreeable enough, and safe enough, people would value you. You believed that constant accommodation was the key to respect and connection. But here's the hard truth. The man who depends on approval will always be controlled by whoever can give it or take it away. Look around your own life. At work, there's always that one guy who says sure to every request. He never complains, never pushes back. And somehow, he ends up carrying the projects no one else wants to touch. Does he get rewarded for it? Does he gain authority or respect? No. He gets overlooked, taken for granted, and quietly buried under everyone else's load. Then there's the other man, the one who can look you in the eye and say no without raising his voice, without making it personal, without apologizing for protecting his own time and priorities. And suddenly, people treat him differently. They pause before making demands. They approach him with more care, more respect. Not because he's cruel, but because he communicates something most men don't. My value isn't for sale, and your approval isn't my oxygen. This is the illusion society sold you. That endless compliance leads to love and respect. In reality, it only leads to being invisible. The moment you stop chasing approval and start standing your ground, you stop being just another face in the crowd and start becoming someone worth noticing. 2. Who the monster really is. The monster is not some reckless brute swinging at shadows. He doesn't waste energy on meaningless fights, and he doesn't walk through life hunting for trouble just to prove a point. He's the man who could push back, and everyone around him knows it. But he doesn't, unless it's absolutely necessary. His restraint is not weakness, it's a choice. A weapon kept sheathed until the right moment. When chaos hits, when tempers explode and the room starts spinning, he's the one who stays calm. Not because he doesn't feel the heat, but because he's learned how to control it. He understands that losing control is the fastest way to lose respect, and the surest way to give power to someone else. The monster doesn't live for applause. He doesn't adjust his behavior just to earn approval or fit in. He knows exactly who he is, and he lives by his own standards, not by the shifting, fragile rules that others try to impose. And here's the thing most people miss. The monster is not dangerous to everyone. He's dangerous only to what threatens what he values, whether that's his integrity, his family, his mission, or his principles. That's why people trust him, even if they can't explain why. They can feel that his strength isn't wild chaos. It's controlled power. A storm that stays on the horizon until you cross the wrong line. In a world full of men desperate to be liked, the monster stands apart, not because he seeks conflict, but because he's ready for it and doesn't fear it. And when you know a man is capable of defending what matters, but chooses peace until it's no longer an option, you know you're standing in the presence of someone you can rely on. 3. Why women secretly respect him. Power has a way of attracting people, especially when it's under control. Raw, undisciplined power can be intimidating, even dangerous. But power mixed with discipline? That's the kind of presence that makes people feel respected and safe. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Many so-called nice guys are harmless, not because they choose to be, but because they have no other choice. They don't have the will, the skill, or the courage to stand up for themselves, let alone anyone else. That's not real security. It's just weakness masquerading as polite manners. And deep down, everyone feels it. It's the difference between a guard dog that won't bite and a dog that can't. When a woman meets a competent man, one who has the discipline to control his emotions, the resilience to stand his ground, and the composure to make decisions under pressure, something changes. There's a quiet, almost hidden respect. She may not express it outright. She may not fully realize it, but you'll notice it in subtle ways. You'll notice it in her leaning toward him when he speaks, as if his words carry more weight. You'll notice it in her hectic thinking before crossing his boundaries, not out of fear, but out of awareness. She realizes he's not a man to be trifled with, not because he's aggressive, but because he's tough, unshakable. A man who may choose conflict, but chooses control. This is the paradox of true power. She doesn't have to shout. She doesn't have to assert herself. He simply is. And that presence, quiet, capable, and in control, is more attractive than any smile or charm. 4. Why they'll never admit it. Here's where it gets complicated. For a woman to openly admit she's drawn to the monster is to admit something far bigger, that she's attracted to strength, to a man who isn't built to orbit around her approval, who doesn't bend his identity to fit her expectations, and who can walk away if his values are crossed. That confession runs headfirst into the narrative society has been selling for decades. The story goes like this. The safe, nice guy is the ideal choice. The man who's always agreeable, always accommodating, the man who never challenges you, never says no, never makes you feel uncomfortable by holding his ground. On paper, that sounds perfect. But in reality, it's hollow. It lacks the weight, the stability, and the unshakable presence that true strength carries. And here's the tricky part. She might feel the pull toward the monster, but saying it out loud would expose her to judgment. It would sound dangerous, risky, even reckless. So it stays hidden, buried in subtle actions and silent glances, because to say it would be to admit a truth that carries a certain danger, that she wants the warmth of his fire, while fully aware of its power to burn. It's the paradox of attraction to strength. You crave it, you respect it, you feel safer with it, but you can't control it. And anything you can't control can feel threatening, even when it's exactly what you need. So the truth remains unspoken, not because it isn't real, but because some truths carry too much weight to be handed over carelessly. Instead, they're guarded, felt in the silence, seen in the eyes, and understood only by those who recognize the same fire in themselves. 5. How to become the monster. Don't act like him. Don't pretend to be him just for effect. You are him, from the inside out. It's not about pretending or wearing a mask. It's about building yourself into the kind of man who no longer needs to convince anyone of his worth. Start with the hardest challenge of all. Get yourself under control before you try to control anything else. If you can't control your temper, if you can't control your emotions, then your power is just chaos looking for a place to explode. And chaos doesn't protect anyone. Live according to your values, especially when it's uncomfortable, especially when it costs you opportunities, comfort, or relationships. Because if you abandon your rules whenever they're hard to follow, they weren't your rules in the first place. Learn the power of no. Don't yell. Don't sugarcoat it with apologies. Just be clear, calm, and steady. You'll be surprised how quickly people respect your boundaries when they realize you're not afraid to enforce them. Build a strong presence, not the loud, attention-grabbing kind. The quiet kind that makes people turn their heads when you walk in. Maintain unbroken eye contact. Body language that suggests you're poised, steady, and not easily influenced. A voice that doesn't race to fill the silence because you're comfortable enough to let your words flow on their own. And most importantly, have a purpose greater than approval. When your life's motivation is deeper than just being liked, you stop playing by other people's rules. When you walk your own path, people notice. They may not always agree, but they'll respect a man who moves with clarity, steadiness, and conviction. That's how you stop trying to stand out and become someone who's hard to ignore. The monster isn't a mask you put on. It's not about acting tougher, louder, or colder. It's about building the discipline, the self-control, and the unshakable values that make you impossible to manipulate and impossible to ignore. Most men will spend their lives chasing approval. The few who stop chasing become the men others quietly respect, and women can't help but be drawn to. If this message hit you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if you're ready to keep sharpening your mind and presence, subscribe to Machiavelli's Code and turn on the bell so you never miss a drop. Remember, control yourself, and the rest will follow.